So I noticed this is from last week was an upload for Zoom. So I don't know what's going to occur here, but it said it was being recorded and I was supposed to hit the button, got it. And so that's the new thing. Got it. I got it. Okay, good. Hopefully there's nothing else too profound, So I was going to start, I've been starting with other people's poems the last couple of weeks, and I was going to go with one of mine that you've probably heard, but it's still good. It's called Sitting Up Straight. Sitting up straight, correcting ourselves over and over, dedicating ourselves to the good, beyond ambition, beyond attainment, yet some deep down longing, correcting posture over and over, knowing, developing this fearless openness, re-establishing, maintaining the flexibility and resilience, knowing no place better to cultivate this sanity, determined to stay in the center of our pillow. Posture can be lost so easily. Darkness creep under our wandering thoughts, coveting the little sparkles, dragging me 100 miles from here. How to avoid these seductive cries? Stories seem more real than the place I sit. How to overcome the sharp edge of a dead past, or conjure up a perfect future. Sometimes simplicity and strength come into the sheer formation of our own loveliness. Living so close to the gut, feelings of peace and ease. The fire of your own voice sings praise to all awakenings. Curled up in front of the fire at home at last. Knowingly bowing to the darkness, old friend coming in the back door, ushering itself out the front door. Straightening up again, mind at rest in soft heart. So appropriate for a sitting practice. So tonight I wanted to talk about this wonderful thing that we're involved in, and it's called Householder. And it's been interesting this last year and a half. I have traveled all my life, so I've never been in one place this long. I remember I first, in the 60s, late 60s, I spent a year in Kathmandu, and it's the first time I could remember being in one place for so long in the same kind of building. And now I've been here for this year and a half. And one of the lovely things is suddenly I realize how domesticated I've become, whether it's making the bed or whether it's, going to the grocery store, and I have my 3 grocery stores I go to. Everything's, there's almost like a prearranged thing in my mind of how it's supposed to be on some level. And yet at the same time, it's very comforting, One of the things that's lovely is routine is actually not such a, bad thing. But I want to start, this is from Ashwagosha. And it's really this, I just thought I'd do a couple things here. The Dharma of the Buddha does not require a person to go into homelessness or to resign from the world, lest he or she feels called upon to do so. But the Dharma of the Buddha requires every person to free themselves from the illusion of self. to cleanse one's heart, to give up one's thirst for pleasure and lead a life of righteousness. And whatever people do, whether they remain in the world as artisans, merchants, or officers of the king, or retire from the world and devote themselves to a life of religious meditation, let them put their whole heart into their task. Let them be diligent and energetic. And if, like a lotus flower, which grows out of the muddy water but remains untouched by the mud, they emerge in life without cherishing envy or hatred. And if they live in the world, not a life of self, but a life of truth. Well, that's a big, if they live a life in the world, not a life of self, but a life of truth, then surely joy, peace, and bliss will dwell in their minds. Isn't that lovely? I like it anyway. And this is from the Dikayan, the Digha Nikaya. The wise who are trained and disciplined shine out like beacon lights. They earn money just as a bee gathers honey without harming the flowers. They let it grow as an anthill slowly gains in height. With wealth wisely gained, they use it for the benefit of all. Those are some wise statements, And we're these householders that, we have to, it was great, at a couple times in my life where I kind of went towards the monastic life. And there was a thing about not needing to, in the Theravadan tradition, not needing to touch money. It was the 227 rules made life so simple. And yet you had to remember them all. And it was a kind of discipline I couldn't hold. But, there was something to it, because we have to deal with money. We have to deal with relationships. We have to deal, the householder, we have to deal somewhere you got to park that body. And then what happens is, and I know I'll testify to this, then you start gathering things up. And of course, I've gathered a lot of Buddhist art over the years. That's something I love. So I have collected it. I probably haven't let go of enough of it. I put a bunch of it at the center, but I still have stuff in this house. So it's like, oh my gosh, it's like this stuff, it's sort of you drag it around. But at the same time, there's something, and this is maybe about that thing about, to me, I was thinking that the other day, looking at some of the artwork here, and I was going, oh, look at some, young Tibetan, just how many little strokes of such a small brush that they dedicated themselves to this artwork that to them was not, in a sense, artwork. It was a religious practice, and what came out of it were a lot of their marvelous art. But I think on some level, there's the world that we inhabit. And I was going to say, there's also one of the things that wasn't mentioned there is just the complexity of families. And which I love family, but they're complex, and sometimes they work okay and sometimes they don't. And there's a lot of teaching that goes on as part of a householder with family that has to inhabit, a residence. And in this culture, I was thinking back in my early days, I probably didn't have a car till I was 32 or something, and there was something so marvelous in not having one, but it was just part of life at that time. And but now I don't know what I would do without a car. It's like to be here, and particularly rural, it's kind of a necessity. It's kind of our horse of how we live and get around. And each of these things, whether it's a house or a family or a car, buildings and water systems and electricity, and we have to take care of it all. And there's different ways. We can be obsessive about it and be very caught up, or we can just see it as okay, this is my means of learning about the world. And I know I think probably of all those things I mentioned, probably a family is one of the more you can't control them. So if you could, that would be great, but you can't. Everybody's their own person. And so they all have their own kind of ideas of how things should be or want to be. And it takes a tremendous amount of the paramis of generosity and ethics and renunciation and wisdom and energy and patience and honesty and determination. These are just there are things that are those things that bring a sense of happiness and goodness. But one of the main features in a world of things, of a householder, is the simple teaching of letting go. And I think that has to be emphasized over and over, because a lot of our suffering comes from the fact that we haven't learned. It's almost like we haven't learned this particular lesson well enough. So, it's kind of a big deal, one thing I didn't include there, because I don't have any, is pets, and that's a whole nother, there's something wonderful about it. And there's something about you become responsible. You have to take care. So the householder life is not necessarily, an easy life, but I also think the monastic life is not an easy life. I know for me, the times that I kind of entered the monastic world, one of the things that always was, it was a great teaching for me, was I didn't have the best childhood. And, I had a lot of difficulties and a lot of ideas. And one of the wonderful things around that was the fact that in the monks I knew who were really great monks, one of the things I noticed about them, or I found out about them, was they had really wonderful mothers and had lived a fairly stable life before. And so in some ways, this it's why I couldn't stay a monk, because I was definitely, I was restless first. I'm kind of ADHD, so that kind of always disturbed. It disturbed a lot of things, but it was also a great teacher, and it has been. And I always thought, only if I could just, if I could stay out of the world. And I think more than anything, I was just afraid of the world, And now that I'm completely, ensconced with 2 kids and 3 grandkids and, all the things that are going on, I feel so blessed, but at the same time, I know any moment, it could all come crashing down. That's the life of a householder. And, we'd like it not to. And of course, I know living out here on the edge of the Yuba Canyon, and there was a fire last week. I think it wasn't big. It was, I think, from a car, and it caught a fire, but it was just down the hill from me. And it's like, oh my gosh, one of these days, that whole, I don't know who I'll be, but it could change everything in a matter of hours, And a lot of us who live up in the foothills and we live out in the forest, this is our reality, that everything could change in a matter of hours, And I was thinking this, was it last week that, who was it from Quincy was on, and that Dixie fire is just kind of, they've protected a lot of the structures there, but it's gone around it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's scary, this, these big fires, and our new reality as householders, Okay, so there's that. And there's, the fact that everything's impermanent. Our relationships are also impermanent, and we hope that nothing happens, but things happen. And we still are in the process of learning this hopefully little lessons called letting go. And it's, to me, this is really the practice, is our capacity to sit and, we kind of learn those things of some, I think there's a lot in sitting practice, is just learning patience. And that instead of just, reacting, that there's this capacity to say, okay, take another breath, just take a moment and give it some space, and then you can see what happens. And sometimes there is disaster there, and it actually happens. I've been through two big fires, and one of them, I lived down on the ridge, and it kind of burned everything I had at the time. I didn't have much, and it was the big deal. But it was ferocious, and I have great empathy for people who are now in these tremendous, earthquakes, storms. I had to go to the map of Afghanistan, and because I was curious about this whole thing. And I realized, when I was in the 60s, I was in Herat, which is like the first town as you leave Iran, you go into. And it was literally just a mud street, was the main street with these mud huts, and I'm sure it's totally different now, but since a lot of money got poured in there. But there was no way in my mind. And then Kandahar, and then up to Kabul. I couldn't believe it when we decided to go in there. I thought, well, how long is this going to last? And so it's just, the world is a complicated life that we live as householders, and as citizens, So I think that on some level we can start to learn I love the word patience, and that a lot of this is that there is immediately, when something in that sphere of the household, when something goes wrong, there's this incredible contraction. And that contraction then fuels, depending on your personality, all sorts of thought of loss, or of disaster or catastrophe, or I don't know, some just incredible. But it's also, it starts as a kind of a reaction a connection actually in the mind, which then influences the body. And then we disassociate from the body. And immediately when we dissociate from the body, then we actually are living in the life of projections and ideas. And it's really why I think that when we talk at least about the Vipassana practice, that it's very much based on our ability to ground whatever that is. And so when that kind of explosion happens, and hopefully not too terrible, then immediately we actually disassociate from the body and we go into the life of the mind and ideas, which are then fueling the emotions, the biochemical process. And what we're trying to learn here is that, and then you can just, then once you go into the life of ideas, you can like make up all sorts of stuff, whatever you want when it comes to disaster, or you can turn your attention to where do you feel that in your body, and this is something I've had to learn, where I then put my attention somewhere physically. And a lot of times I just go to my stomach, because it's, when I was young, one of the things was that I woke up to the fact that I carried a lot of my fear in my stomach. So I had to learn to put my attention there and see if I couldn't, in a sense, is kind of like the whole idea of this homeostasis, of bringing it somewhat back into balance. And it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, I can say, because a lot of times when terrible things happen, there is such, the fear and anxiety then creates the disassociation. And from our practice's point of view, this is, every time that happens, it also can be an opportunity to ground your attention and maybe give yourself, maybe it's just a few breaths, which it's part of one of the beauties of the simple practice of the Buddha kind of emphasizing putting the attention on the breath, because the breath actually affects the mind and how it reacts, so that actually you can bring your attention to your breath and calm the system down, that then gives you some perspective, gets you out of the ferocity of that emotional contraction, And I will say here that, sometimes when the fight or flight or freeze response comes, you have to get up and run, I mean, that's the thing. I think I may be a little slow with when the fire comes. There's part of my attachment of being here. And the other one is just, take a grab bag, get in your car and go, And I know that's the right psychology. And yet, because of attachment, let me get out my hose and hose the place down or something, which may be okay. But on this hillside, no way. It's just, that's not what you do. You leave, But hopefully you can kind of learn to do this, because it's actually, and it does take practice, because, and it's something that it's really what the sitting practice is about, is it starts to solidify the system. So suddenly, and this is the great thing about the breath, and I've found this to happen over and over again, is that I'll be in some, some place, and maybe something is said or something in the environment, and I have that reaction of contraction, and And what's beautiful is that because I've trained myself this way, that's the first thing I do is I go and I kind of, and maybe, you know, in a fire or something, it may not be the wisest thing. It's better run quick, or a car is coming at you. But majority of the time, there is this pause that then gives a chance for the first of all, the biochemistry of the body to first to notice it, and that then there is a kind of non-reactivity to it. That, oh, okay, you know, let's see if I can't sit there and you know, maybe it's sometimes just having some generosity for yourself in the midst of a hopefully not a catastrophe, but and that's the other thing, you know, I think that doing it in little ways, and I think sometimes the practice is that, you know, that when we sit and practice, you know, thoughts come up, memories come up, and sometimes they catch us and grab us. And every time we recognize that, and that there is a unhealthy kind of feeling around that, that we can actually let go of that. And in letting go of that, then we're actually strengthening our ability in large moments. And this is kind of part of the art of, I believe, of meditation practice, is being able to do that on some level. So I was going to, I'd like to just open it to questions, answers, insights, outsights, round sights.
Teacher Travis, it's Gabrielle. I wanted to say that I'm a member of the local fire council, not a fire watch group, but the regional fire council.
Right.
And one of the things that seasoned fire captains, 30 years under their belts, are saying is always trust your instincts. And I think that points to something about what you're saying about being body oriented in our meditation and in our awareness. They said, don't wait for code red. Don't go on all sorts of media or social media or ask your neighbors or whatever. If you think you're not safe, if you feel you're not safe, get out. Because the worst that could happen is you feel a little foolish when you left and you didn't need to. The point being, you're alive to feel foolish.
Correct.
So
Yes.
that's all I wanted to say.
And I completely agree with that, you know. And, you know, here, the whole, it's really around grasping and attachment that we, you know, we want to kind of preserve our space or our property or whatever. And, you know, that's what in one sense we're kind of trying to train ourselves out of, is that it's more instinctual, and that we can say, okay, yeah, no, it's time, you know. You can replace the things, but not you. So it's been an interesting time, this pandemic, you know. It's kind of like a fire in the culture, and there's a lot of media about it. And you know, again, I think instinctually, people know how to protect themselves, and but you know, the 1 in 100 chances out there, you just don't know. And you hope that the the vaccine is going to kind of protect you in some way. And I'm completely into that. I actually want a booster shot. I think that's the thing about getting 75 and not having the best lungs in the world. And, I want to live. And whether it's a fire or whether it's a pandemic, there's no reason that, we should endanger myself. I just signed up to teach in-person retreat at Spirit Rock in the beginning of November. And I'm praying that, it's okay, but who knows, we all are kind of sitting, we're all sitting on the fence at this time, and I was thinking I haven't been able to plan anything for so long, that's a great gift. It means there's just today, and that's, make the bed and make sure there's something, go to the grocery store and go to the gym, and that's it. That's the whole life, and maybe a few poems here and there, Please, Charmaine. You have to unmute yourself.
What I've been feeling with all that's been going on, what you've related to so much of, is the word lethargic. I'm just lethargic. I don't, I do what I have to do. And then there's a blandness about it because there is so much unknown out there. And I know I'm not alone in that, but I don't know if you've experienced it or others have experienced that or not.
Well, I think there's a beauty in this, and I'll speak of that. And that's the fact that, at least for me, there's this routine, and I take a nap sometimes in the morning, and it's like I'm living a life I never lived before. I was always on the go, and I was changing one backpack or suitcase for another continuously. And I probably sleep more now than I ever have. And I think it's a blessing, But I understand, Charmaine, because there's also that thing of, well, maybe I should be doing more,
Yeah.
And
or wanting to do more, wanting to do more is part of it too.
Yeah.
But maybe the word patience is that you've denoted has to do with that. How it sounds like you've shifted, able to shift. And well, it's I guess again, what do you call it? Letting it be,
And also there's a thing about, I know for myself, there's this thing about always being productive and all that stuff. And a lot of it, I think sometimes it's just an old voice about who I'm supposed to be, not who I am. It's kind of the old judge,
Well, it's not that I'm a person who's is driven or have to be productive, but being able to feel like doing, well, you already gave me the answer years ago. Anyway, yeah,
it's what it is right now.
It is what it is.
Right now. And I think everyone here, if you ask, everybody's got some story about what this is, how this is being for them. And, you know, in that it's a different world, you know, and I think we're all learning. Hopefully, what I hope is we're learning that, you know, this idea of kind of patience and kind of determination of just being is enough, you know. And I think out of that, the other thing I'll say, and then this is the last part of that, is I think there's something about helping others. The world is such a mess, you know, that if there can be some means that you can help another, and and not everybody has the what the circumstances for that to be. And sometimes you just have to take care of yourself and you know, look for those opportunities, because they're out there, you know. And even in pandemic times. So that's good. Where are we time-wise? I can't see. Well, I may read something, and this is out of my friend Jack Cornfield. It's something I said to him years ago and about it. And it's this, I would like the recording turned off. Cindy, could you turn the recording off?